Today it's go big or go home as we brew a Russian Imperial Stout. Here's how. So before we look at the brew steps, let's skip ahead to see how this thing turned out. You see, it's been 4 months since brew day. We've aged the beer, we've put it on nitro, and what we've got now is a finished Imperial Stout. The taste, it's pretty good. The thing that just lets it down a little bit is the rather un-imperial ABV of 5.8%. And that's because we didn't get our original gravity correct because of a couple of process errors through brew day. So we're going to show you what those process errors were and make sure you don't make the same mistakes, and perhaps you can brew an even better tasting beer. So let's go back now to 4 months previous and take a look at brew day. So when you're brewing a high gravity beer like this, and this one's due to come out around 8.8%, there are really two things that are very notable. One is the grain bill. Now we're doing a 10-gallon batch today, and there is 40 pounds of grain in here, mainly pale malt. And then the other thing to consider is the yeast. According to Brewer's Friend, for a beer like this, we need about 600 billion yeast cells, which probably means you need to do a yeast starter. Or if you're kind of lazy like we are, you can just throw some money at the problem and buy lots of yeast packets. The hop bill for this is pretty simple. Not an awful lot of hops going in, being in a Russian Imperial Stout. We've got Chinook and also got Centennial here. So those are the hops we'll be throwing in during the boil. But first, let's heat some water. So the issue we've got here is this bed of grain seems to be so very, very heavy that it's just getting caught up and we're not getting a good flow. And the way we can tell that is the thermometer up here in the mesh tun is about 164 now. Down here we're about 190, so there's a big difference. And that's probably because the hot water is not circulating and falling through this quick enough, and it's just taking a very long time to get anywhere.
What we need to do is take the grain out and see what it's like with that orifice in with just a clean flow.
Well, we seem to have sort of fixed the problem now. The flow's not much better, but we're at least at the right temperature. So we'll leave this for a few minutes and then we'll get ready for the boil and mash out. Chinook hops going in now. We finally got this water in and boiling. Smells delicious.
It smells great.
Now the moment of truth, which is to see what the actual original gravity is. So we're about 1.070 original gravity. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking at 1.090, and we did have a lot of mash problems this time. I think we almost kind of had a stuck mash. We had a very slow rate of circulation, which would, I guess, make sense why it was really not quite where we need it to be. It's also too warm. It's about 80 degrees the wort right now. So what I've done is I've put the freezer here on about 40 degrees. Going to leave it in here for a couple of hours, and once the wort has cooled down, we'll put the yeast in. and let it do its thing. We're just tidying up now and come to realise that we made a pretty big process error here, and it's all to do with the chiller. So I'm going to tell you about it so maybe you won't make the same silly mistake. And that's all to do with this plate chiller here. The plate chiller is great, but the very important part of this, of course, is to make sure it's sanitized. And the best way that we found to do that is to run the wort through the plate chiller while it's still hot and boiling for about the last 10 minutes of the boil. We kind of forgot to do that, so that meant that this had not been sanitized with hot wort before going in. So we'll see if that turns out to be a problem during fermentation or not. Fingers crossed. Okay, well we left the wort in there for a few hours and it's got down to about sort of 66 degrees now. So putting the yeast in and we will leave this overnight and see how it goes. It's been a month and we've been leaving this, doing nothing with it, but now it's time to see what the final gravity is. Our original gravity was too low. We'll see what we got. 22, 46, 26. So it looks like our Imperial Stout has come out at a very un-imperial 5.77%. Let's call it, can we call it 6?
It's supposed to be 10.
Round up? Yeah, no, it's supposed to be 8 or 9, or I don't know.
We can call it the remains of the British Empire Stout. Not as imperial as it once was.
Severely weakened. Tastes quite good though. Indeed it does. So if you want to try brewing this beer yourself, we've included the recipe in the description below. For more homebrew how-to videos, click on that subscribe button. Cheers!